This video is sponsored by Squarespace. It's mid-July and my garden does not look like what I thought my garden would look like come mid-July, and it's been a little hard to adjust the reality to what my dreams are. But then I remembered this is my first year garden, and I was a crazy person when I thought that it would become the garden of my dreams. Every single time you start a new garden, you know, it takes time. Plants need to get established. You need to learn the new growing conditions. You need to learn what your soil is. You need to learn how much water everything needs, the sun exposure, how hot. Every single time you start a new garden, the amount of learning that gets done in that first year is exponential, and I have been doing that. So even though I'm gonna show you my garden and it's not gonna look like what I hoped it would, I have done a lot of learning so far, and it's really setting me up with a solid base for being able to create the garden of my dreams next year and all the years to come. The first section that I want to start with is my veggie garden. I've been saying for years that I want to get back to growing veggies, and I've been failing, and so this year was the year. I was very, very determined to do it, but a lot of this stuff got into the ground really, really late. So I was nervous if I was still gonna be able to get any sort of harvest like what I dreamed of. But I have to say, everything has been growing just amazingly. A lot of this stuff has only been in the ground for 4 weeks, not very long, and it's doing so well. One of my absolute favorite things to grow is eggplant. I love eating it, I love growing it. I mean, how could you not? They're the most beautiful plants in the world. And I thought for sure this might be the perfect location for eggplant. It gets so hot in this backyard area. It gets so hot in this area that I've been concerned about what cooler temperature veggies I won't be able to grow here. I've been trying to discover some areas that are cooler in the yard. But so far, my eggplants, they're proving me right. The amount of growth that these plants have put on, because they were really sad and stunted. They've been in these pots for way longer than they should have been, and now here they are. They're growing, they're beautiful. The variety that I'm in front of right here is one of my absolute favorite eggplant varieties. This is Orient Express, and one of the reasons that I love it is I'm in Canada, I'm a zone 5, I do get some heat in the summer, but let's be honest, this is not ideal eggplant growing location, and Orient Express always produces really well for me. You can see these plants are covered in flowers, and like I said, these have only been in the ground for a little bit of time. There's fruits that are starting to form, and on this little plant here, I even have an almost full-grown eggplant. Like this grew out of nowhere. This is about 2 weeks from flower to, you know, I could harvest that fruit now and get something to eat. So I absolutely love this variety for its ability to produce quickly and to keep producing throughout the season, because the more European style eggplants, which I do have a few of, my variety that I grow is Traviata, and I like it, but I usually only get a couple fruits, and they end up producing more into September, because those fruits can take, you know, 6 weeks to get to the size that they're ready to harvest, so they just don't give that succession like these oriental style ones do. Another one of my favorite things to grow, which love the heat, is pepper plants. And so I had quite a few. I think I have almost 80 pepper plants planted here. The spacing on these is like 1 foot apart, so they look quite tight, but I've grown them with this spacing at the farm before, and they did really well. I didn't label all of my peppers because I knew once the pepper fruit formed, I'd be able to recognize them. So they're kind of like all a mix of stuff. But one of the largest amounts of peppers that I have is shishito peppers, and this is kind of clustered in here. And I love shishito peppers. I hadn't, here, let me get one to show you. It's ready, so Here, this is a shishito. And so what these are is these are a Japanese grilling pepper. So they don't have any heat to them, but they're kind of shaped and flavored like a hot pepper. The flavor is really unique to them, and you eat them like seeds and all. You take this pepper and you just kind of fry it up and then eat it as is. And I grew them on the farm before, back when we grew veggies, and they were a very productive plant. We had a single row of them in the greenhouse. I think if it was a 50, we would have had like 50 plants, and the amount of shishitos that we got every week to be able to bring down to market was just incredible. They weren't a great seller, which didn't really bother me because it meant like every other day I'd eat just like a feast of those shishito peppers, and I loved it. It was one of my favorite things to eat. A little bit of garlic, just pan fry them with some oil. So good, so tasty. So I made sure to start enough plants that I'd be able to, have meals worth. One of the things, like when you grow things in your garden, is if you only have like 1 or 2 shishito plants, you're only going to kind of get like 1 or 2 peppers off of each plant when you go to do a harvest. So, if I had 4 of these, it's not really going to make a meal to be able to pick 8. So I made sure that I started about like 25 or 30 of these plants. So it meant that when I went to pick, 1 off of each plant, I could actually put together a full meal of them. Sometimes I find, if your space is limited, it doesn't make sense to just grow 1 of something, even though you'd like to experiment with it. You're better off to grow what's going to be practical for eating. So I've been really happy with these plants. You can see they're kind of like, they're very pretty. They're kind of bushy the way they grow, and they're kind of same as that Asian eggplant. They just produce and produce and produce, and they produce really early because the fruits, you don't have to ripen them at all. So it's a variety I highly recommend. I also have some sweet bell peppers. I can, there's one here. It's got a little bit of a fruit forming, and I can tell that they're kind of clustered in here. This again is some of those sweet bell peppers. It's just putting on more growth. The variety that I grow for this is Red Knight. I've had really good luck for getting good production, despite my, Canadian conditions that I'm dealing with. And the price of it isn't super crazy. And then finally, I have a bunch of hot peppers. One of my favorite, homemade products to make, which I haven't made in a few years, so I'm really missing it, is fermented hot sauce. And you need a bunch of peppers to be able to do it, and so I was really hoping to kind of get a winter supply for myself. So I think I have about like 30 or 40 hot peppers in here. Yeah, that makes sense. One of my favorite varieties for flavor, okay, I harvested this, is this here. This is a Hungarian hot pepper. Just amazing flavor on it. It gets a little bit of sweetness, and it's not super spicy. I also have some jalapenos mixed in here. There was a couple kind of more spicy ones, a couple habaneros. Hot peppers are always a lot slower to grow than sweet peppers and these like shishito peppers. So I know which ones are the hots because the plants are a lot more stunted. They're a lot more slow. The plan with these is they're not going to really produce anything for harvest until kind of the very end of the season in September. Then I can do a really big pick on it and put it together for hot sauce. So yeah, peppers. I'm very happy. Behind me is my tomato jungle, which is a problem. It's on the list of things to deal with this week. So I got the tomatoes into the ground without knowing what I was going to do with them. I have about 100 different tomato plants here, and it's a whole mixture of varieties. I have like a bunch of Juliet. It's like a mini Roma, which I absolutely love. I like to use it to make sun-dried tomatoes, sauce or eating. Like if I could only grow one, I would grow Juliet. But I also have some cherry tomatoes. I grew Sakura which is a red cherry. I have some sun golds, which are a little orange, and then just a few bits and pieces of different ones, kind of single plants here and there for cherries. And then I have some bigger tomatoes too. I grew a few big Dinas. A friend of mine, Jennifer, gave me seeds a couple years ago, so I was super excited to get a couple of those germinating for in the garden because it's my absolute favorite. And then a mixture of kind of other ones. There's some pink Berkeley tie-dye, which are like a bigger fruiting one. Yeah, so there's a lot of tomatoes in here, but I don't know what to do with them. I had purchased these tomato cages. Most people don't like growing in tomato cages, but I honestly, I don't mind them. I find that, so I like to grow indeterminate tomatoes, which means they're a vining tomato. So they keep growing. They're not like a more compact one. So sometimes that's problematic with these cages. But what I do is they kind of grow up out of the top, and then I start kind of just vining them all across the top of the cages, which has worked quite well for me in the past. But even though I bought 30 cages, it kind of only did a single row of tomatoes, and I have 3 entire rows of tomatoes. So what I'm hoping to do is to get some stakes in here and to do a trellising system called like the Florida weave, which is basically you string between the tomato plants and tension it against stakes to kind of keep them going upwards. But right now, it's just a jungle. There's fruits forming, there's flowers, there's nothing ripe yet. But if I don't deal with this week, it's never gonna be productive the way I need it to be to fill my freezer with beautiful summer ripened tomatoes to enjoy all year long. This vegetable garden area, I mean, I'll be honest, this entire backyard area has been a little bit of a struggle that I didn't anticipate. Nothing grew back here last year. There was some trees that I was trying to keep alive to see if someone would want them in the fall when it was a good time to dig them out. So I was doing some watering, but what happened is a bunch of bindweed kind of started to grow in this area. And I dealt with bindweed in a small way on the farm in the past, but never like a bindweed infestation like what I've heard other people talk about. It's a really aggressive, really invasive, really hard to kill perennial weed that, yeah, it's one of the 3 that are just really challenging to get under control. So the plan originally was this whole area was going to get, turned into garden. But this area where the trees were growing, which got a little bit of water last year, was so overtaken by bindweed all spring that I decided like all I could do was try to fight the bindweed. So what you can see behind me is just me not having done anything for the last kind of 3 weeks. I've been constantly attacking this bindweed with the plan to try to get it, if I can get it kind of reset, then maybe it'll be at the point that I can battle it next year. But yeah, I mean, now that I've been watering this garden area, it's really taken off. And it's something that's going to be a major challenge for me here in this entire yard for years to come. I'm confident that if I stay on top of it, it'll get to a manageable point. But yeah, I mean, weeds are hard to stay on top of, so trying to stay on top of something as aggressive as bindweed is going to be a real challenge. This was a little corner where the bindweed was a bit better, so I tried to grow in it. And so this patch here is like a densely planted, like baby green mustard mix patch. If you saw my, my top veggie recommendations video that I did in the winter, I said one of my absolute favorite things to grow is mustard greens, and that I do a custom mix. And so this is kind of that blend of all the different varieties here. And yeah, it's ready to harvest. There's deliciousness here. But the one thing I kind of wanted to show was there's this section that's kind of a little bit empty right in front of it. And this was a section where I had planted like densely planted lettuce seed to be baby greens to go along with the mustard, and you can probably tell that there isn't a single lettuce plant here. The seeds that I'm using are all my old leftover farm seed, so it's seeds that, you know, some of them are newer, some of them are 2-3 years old, but there's some stuff that, you know, is up to 6 years old from the first year of having the farm. And lettuce seed is kind of, it's only viable for a year or two, is what people say. But, you know, I'm always like, who knows, right? Like, I just very, very densely put down the lettuce in here thinking, maybe some of it'll still come up. And as you can see, not a single one did come up. So I need to go through my seed and throw out anything that's lettuce. You know, obviously it's not going to do anything, but I found it really interesting to know that, you know, some of those, like how long seed is viable for is really accurate. I thought for sure something would come up. I have an entire bed of different summer squashes and zucchinis, and this makes me so happy because I could gladly eat multiple zucchinis a day when they're in season. I absolutely love them. You can kind of see that there's a little bit of a different look on the plants. You know, this is a good example here, right? Like this coloring on the leaf, this isn't powdery mildew yet. It will be, but this plant just kind of has a little bit of a mosaicing that naturally happens. This is my zucchini variety. I can't remember off the top of my head what my green zucchini variety is, but I have a few plants of that. And then this variety here, which you can see is like larger and more robust, this is my absolute favorite zucchini. This is Dima, and so this is I forget the style zucchini, where it's from. I want to say Middle Eastern zucchini, but these most delicious zucchini ever. They're really creamy. They're totally different than a green zucchini, and they have this really pale skin. I absolutely love them. Dima isn't available at Johnny's Seeds, but they do have a Middle Eastern variety there that people have told me are quite similar with that creaminess and the lighter skin. And then finally at the very back, I have some patty pans growing too. Here I have my absolute favorite cut flower to grow. I don't have any annual cut flowers planted in the garden. The plan was that I was eventually going to get around to starting them, but the one thing that I couldn't resist getting started early was the status. And I'm so glad that I did. Back on the farm, I used to grow 3 full beds of status. That was 1,200 plants, and that was the perfect amount of status. So having only 50 is a little bit to adjust to. But it's really interesting. The status got in the ground really late. Status likes, even though it's a summer blooming plant and it likes the heat, what status really likes is to be established in cool weather. It likes to get into the ground and kind of root itself and grow slowly in that cooler weather so that it can then explode and put up lots of flower stems once the heat comes. And so these didn't get to do that. These were quite set back. But despite that, these plants are incredibly lush. The greenery on these look so much healthier than what they ever looked like back at the farm. And I think the reasoning for that is that the soil here is very, very different from what the soil was like back on the farm. The farm, it was very sandy. It was a huge struggle to keep nutrients in the ground. Because of the sandy soil, any sort of nutrients that was kind of like put in like a fertilizer would flush through really quickly anytime we watered. I started experimenting with more of like a foliar fertilization system where you actually spray it onto the greenery of the plants and then it absorbs in, but that's a lot of labor. You have to keep doing that constantly. It's not like you can just feed the soil at the beginning of the season. This soil hasn't been fed at all. I'm just growing in what I had. But despite that, because I have this more loamy, it's quite heavy. It's quite clay-like in some locations. it obviously is holding a lot more nutrients for these plants, and it's really showing in how healthy and how quickly they're growing. So even though, as I've said, this garden isn't what I wanted it to be, this stuff got planted really, really late, seeing this has me incredibly excited for what things are going to look like in the future. You know, maybe on the farm, I was struggling with growing conditions that were challenging. Maybe some of the struggles that I was having trying to get plants to grow the way I knew they could wasn't so much me doing things wrong and more me not realizing how much that sandy soil was setting me back. That's what I have for the garden so far, and probably mostly for this year. You know, I'll get some lettuce in, I'll get some successions of that mustard green, but just gonna have to try to keep on top of that bindweed. The plan for the hillside is where all the flowers are supposed to go. And it's not growing as well as I hoped it would. Part of it is that the bindweed infestation is also infesting into this hillside. It's not as bad as what the flat is, but this is gonna need constant maintenance for a few years to be able to get this bindweed under control. And I've been trying to keep on top of it, but I've only got about half of the garden with any sort of weed control happening. On the top half you can see a lot of this like white yarrow, and that was actually a weed that was growing last year that I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep it. Yarrow creates like a really dense root mat in the ground. So because of that, it can be like a really, really difficult weed to deal with because it'll come and smother everything out. But if you like yarrow, which I do, it's great because it kind of will create like a weed barrier for anything else to grow in. So a lot of this dense yarrow, even though it's preventing anything else from growing, there is nothing else growing, so at least it's keeping the weeds that I don't like down. And then, you know, as I need space for planting things in, I could just rip the entire thing out. I'm not overwhelmed with getting rid of it. I know how, but I don't know, it looks pretty for now. The plan in here originally was that I had a bunch of perennials planted. I mean, in the spring it was gorgeous because I have about 1,000 tulip and daffodil bulbs scattered all throughout this. But the plan was I was going to have these perennial plantings as a base, and then I was just going to absolutely fill this with annual cut flowers this year, and none of that got done. So my new revised plan, because like ideally I would like the lower maintenance aspect of those perennials to be kind of in this space. It's kind of ideal to get things established that'll come back year after year. So starting this week, I'm going to be seeding a bunch of the perennials that I really enjoy growing. You know, I have some Ringium seeds like bee balm, feverfew, rudbeckias, stuff that I grew every single year on the farm. I'm gonna get it started now. I'm gonna grow it in the seed plugs for about 6 weeks, so that'll get me to the beginning of September, and then I'm gonna plant it out here beginning of September. The days are shorter, so the nights are cooler. It's a perfect time to get perennials established. If you've heard of Lisa Marie Ziegler, I think is her name, Cool Flowers. She has this whole system of like you overwinter flowers. Here in Zone 5, a lot of the stuff that she does isn't necessarily viable for me because the warmer weather crops just won't survive. But all those perennials really, really do well getting planted in the fall, over winter with no problems, and come up really strong in the spring. So I'm gonna keep weeding and get planting into here this year. It's, you know, there is still stuff in here, but I'm gonna really consider this space like this is Tomorrowland. That's what this is. This is, you know, this is a work in progress space. But I do know it's gonna look gorgeous because it's kind of hard to see, but along the front here, I have about 70 dahlias already planted. They were in 1 gallon pots, and they were in a slightly shaded area, so they're not as far along as they should be. But now that these are getting the heat and the sun and the water, these are really gonna start exploding over the next couple weeks. And come September, this is just gonna be a wall of flowers. You know, and then I also, like, right behind me, I have some feverfew, I have some lilies, I have some phlox, I put in some Shasta daisies, I have some liatris, whole mix of stuff that I have kind of planted into strips that is not looking like much, but as I said, the plan for this is these perennials are gonna get established, and it's gonna be about what they're gonna look like next year. So even though it's not looking like anything now, there's going to be a lot to look at here next year, I know, and I just keep telling myself, it's not a this year garden, it's a next year garden. And it makes me feel a lot better about the fact that it's not what I wanted it to be. The one thing that really made the difference between this being a nothing over the last couple weeks and this actually starting to come together as a garden is irrigation. Where I live, nothing grows without water, and it's been a real struggle for me to keep this space watered. My yard is 1/4 of an acre, and I was really excited about that when I bought it because I knew that was a lot of growing space. I've actually done the math recently, and I have 4,000 square feet once everything's done of prime growing locations. So I have a lot of space, but that also means that's a lot of watering needs that I'm gonna need to provide. I always really loved the wobblers on the farm. The thing that is great about the wobblers is that they do a very large area with very low water pressure. A more, you think of the classic oscillating sprinkler. The only reason why those sprinklers even move and spray is because of the water pressure. And so if your house has low pressure, or if you're trying to run 2 sprinklers at the same time, they're not gonna work. I have another sprinkler that I really like. It's just a really simple ring. It's great, it pumps out a ton of water, but it only does about 10 square feet. So it's great for intensely watering a small area, but you need to be bumping that sprinkler every half an hour, and it can take up your entire life trying to keep a space watered. So I was really excited when I went on Dubois, the place where I used to buy a lot of my farm equipment. They had this home gardener wobbler system. And so it came with the wobbler head, the wobbler nozzle, this post, this entire water hose piece, and then it is designed to attach to just a garden hose. And so this entire thing, I think it was $50 for them. But yeah, this single head is covering the entire garden here, right? So it hits the fence over on the other side, and it is extra watering up into the hillside. But yeah, no, the spread on this is 25 feet, which is incredible to just have this single head water so much, because I've automated this. Let me show you. So one of the most frustrating things about home gardening versus farming is there just isn't water infrastructure. So I have a tap coming out of my house to be able to water everything. I have a tap at the front too, which is nice. But so I've been really struggling. I have a deck, so this hose here is run up to the deck, but to be able to access down here, I have to walk all the way around. So turning on the water to water my pots on the deck is a pain in the butt. And then wanting to water all the garden, the wobblers, because they don't spit out a lot of water. When I run them for 2 hours. So just trying to manage water manually here in the Okanagan where you have to water so much, it's really challenging. So what I did is I picked up one of these. I've been seeing these at the hardware store. It's an automated like irrigation system, but it's just this like simple box that you like twist on to your tap, and you like pop a battery in it. And like this one is 2 zones. I've seen them as 4 zones. When I looked at them, it felt too good to be true. It felt like there's no way that this little simple thing could like run an entire irrigation system. I don't know why I didn't think that these work, because they obviously do. But I finally caved and I bought one, and oh my god, life changer. Like, this is the best thing in the world. I got this on Amazon. It was $40. It was so cheap. And it's been working incredible. So I have 2 wobblers here in the backyard, so the 2 zones, and I have a handful of garden hoses to attach the wobblers, and like the entire yard is taken care of. I never need to consider anything. I'll throw a link down in the description for where I got this from. We got the tub set up. Sam has been loving playing in it. It's the best kiddie pool in the world. And then it drains into this garden box that was here when I purchased the place. And what I've done with this garden box is I've turned it into my herb garden. So I have, like, they're all sad and small because they're brand new plants, but I have a little bit of everything. I have some thyme and some oregano, chives, this tarragon, French tarragon, a couple different sages because I love sage, and then some mints. Let's see, a lovage and a catmint, I think, is also in here. No, a lemon balm. That's what it was. So, you know, I think this is gonna slowly become a really fun space. Ideally, in the long term, this location on my yard, I'd like to get in a greenhouse. This is one of the few kind of flat spaces, but it's, you know, it's not gonna be in the budget for a couple of years. So until then, it's this beautiful pool and herb garden. I finally got my shade plants planted into my shade garden area. Over the spring, I'd been buying all these hellebores. Every time I saw hellebores, I was like, I can't resist, I have to buy them. I had a handful of different hostas and different plants, and they kind of just been sitting and sitting and sitting, but I got it done. I got them into the ground. So they're looking a little sad, right? Because everything was getting like a little bit more sun than it needed, a little bit less water than it needed. But I know that these perennials, they'll be fine. They'll once they get a little bit of proper watering, you know, a whole season of growth, they'll look amazing next spring. It looks really messy right now because the plan is all these pieces of cardboard laying around are eventually going to get laid on top to kind of smother out the grass and weeds that are in this area, and then the wood chips that I have still in my driveway from getting my trees removed I'm gonna put on top to hold the cardboard down and to keep this whole area a little bit cooler, hold the moisture in a little bit better. So it looks like a mess now, but that's only because this is one of the jobs that's on the list for getting on top of, and I'm really excited about this space. It's a lot denser than I planned. Originally, I had twice as much space that I was going to spread these plants into, whereas my plan now is I'm going to be building a bit of a shed in some of the shade area. So I concentrated everything kind of into this smaller space. You know, originally I think I had 800 square feet for this entire shade area, and this here is probably only about like 300 or 400 square feet that's planted. So it's kind of already ideal spacing. So next year it's not gonna look empty. It's gonna look quite full, and like by year 3, this is, you know, it's gonna be just like a mass of stuff growing. You know, I'm really excited. And then there's also some shade plants that I'm gonna be grabbing from the farm in the fall when things cool down a little bit and it's better for transplanting. I'm gonna bring over some ferns, a few more hostas. So this space is, it's gonna make me really happy. You know, when I went to buy my place, I was looking for full sun because you need full sun to grow. But I love shade plants, and so finally having shade to grow in is such a treat. And you know, I've definitely indulged myself in hellebores. Behind me is about 100 square feet where I crammed in like 400 or 500 anemones this spring, and they did really, really well. It doesn't look like much at this point because they've started to die back. With anemones, they're like a spring blooming. Once the heat of the summer comes, they dry out, and then you can like get the corms out of the ground because they're not quite able to survive over the winter here, and then you can bring them in and then replant them the following year. I'm really excited about how well these anemones did. Anemones need the same conditions as ranunculus, kind of those spring bloomers, and this was kind of the perfect spot to grow them. They did really, really well. And in this kind of general space, I have about 400 square feet of really similar growing conditions. So I'm really excited about what I can grow kind of in this weird in-between space in the years to come. I think I can get some really incredible spring crops out of here. And then finally behind me is my front yard where my trees used to be. And now I'm left with just this evergreen ground cover. This looks like nothing and it's not exciting to look at, but in my mind's eye, this is one of the spots in the yard that I'm the most excited about, because the plan for this year is that I'm gonna be removing out this evergreen ground cover, completely getting rid of it, taking a peek at what I have to deal with underneath there, because could be rock face. I don't know yet what this is. And then I'm gonna terrace it. I'm gonna put in about 3 retaining wall I don't know how I'm gonna do it yet because budgets are a concern, but this is gonna get leveled out, and then this is gonna become growing conditions that are totally different than anything else I have on my property. This is gonna become morning sun, afternoon shade. It's gonna be the space where all those plants that can't handle strong heat in the summer are gonna really thrive. And having this growing space, which is gonna be so different than that baking hot sun, perfect for the tomatoes and the peppers, having the mix of those two spaces to play with is gonna be really incredible for what I'm capable of growing. I feel like even though this property is limited, and even though it's been a lot of work, and it's going to be a lot of work to get it to the point that it's capable of being everything I imagine it can be, I think this is going to be a really great space for moving into the future. It's going to have everything that I want to play with without being overwhelming at all because of the size. So it's not the garden tour that I wanted to be able to show you guys at this point in the year. I was kind of hoping to have an entire hillside of cut flowers, arrangements, beautiful things going on, but I should have known better. I'm still feeling that progress is being made, even if I'm moving at snail's pace. You know, this year, it is what it is, but I'm still really excited about where it's going. And, you know, I'm hopeful that, you know, I'm going to have exciting things to show you all in the future. Squarespace is an all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. Whether you're just starting out or managing a growing brand, Squarespace makes it easy to create a beautiful website, engage with your audience, and sell anything from products to content to time. All in one place, all on your terms. I love how easy they make it for me to build a website with their cutting-edge design tools like Blueprint AI and a library of professionally designed templates. But that's not all. Squarespace's invoicing and email campaigns simplifies running your business, leaving you more time for your customers. And it's never been easier to offer services like consultations or experiences with tools like built-in appointment scheduling, or even create member-only content to sell courses and more behind a paywall. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/youcaneatthegrass to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.